And people just came in. All right, everyone, welcome to the March 18th, 2024 Finance Committee meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I'll ask for any nominations for committee chair.
I nominate Sonia Spalding.
Are there any seconds?
Can I second my own nomination?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'll second it.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, shall we call a vote?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Great. We have two. Do you vote two? I don't know. Yes, would you like to vote two?
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Sonia will be our Finance Committee Chair, and I'll hand the meeting over to you, Sonia.
Thanks, Karen. First, I want to apologize that I can't be there in person, so I'm really sorry about that. The next order of business is to elect a vice chair, and is there any nominations for vice chair? Okay, hearing none, I would nominate Emily Wheeler Reynolds as a vice chair.
I would second that.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of electing Emily as the vice chair of the committee, please signify by saying aye.
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 All right, congratulations, Emily. You are officially the vice chair. The next item on the agenda is number 3, additions and changes to the agenda. Are there any additions or changes that we need to make to this agenda? Okay, hearing none, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Next is public comment, and public comment is for items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak regarding something that is not on our agenda? Okay. Hearing nothing, we will move on. The next item on the agenda is review and approval of the meeting minutes, and we have 2 sets of minutes. We have the meeting minutes for November 13th, 2023, and the meeting minutes for January 4th, 2024. And we can take them together or separately, whatever the committee prefers. Would someone like to make a motion to approve one or both?
I will make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for November 13th, 2023, and the meeting minutes for January 4th, 2024.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Is there a second? Okay, I'll second it. Are there any questions or comments or discussion about the meeting minutes?
Sonia, I'm just going to abstain because I wasn't present for those.
Okay. It's fine if you want to abstain. It's also okay if you want to vote, because in some instances we wouldn't have necessarily enough people, like in the example of like a negotiations committee where the entire committee overturns there. If everyone abstained, we would never be able to approve minutes. So it's okay for you to abstain. It's also okay for you to vote for them, but whichever you prefer is fine.
Thank you.
Okay, so all of those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I know the chair doesn't normally vote, but since there's only 3 of us, I have to vote. So it's a little weird, but the minutes are approved. Oh, I'm sorry. And Catherine, are you abstaining?
Yes.
Okay, and Catherine abstains. Thank you so much. The minutes are approved with 2 yeses and 1 abstention. Next is new business 6.1, the review of our annual by-month agenda items, and it's in your packet. And is Lisa available? Is she there?
I am. Yeah.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Would you like to go over the monthly agenda items?
Sure. I created this a few years ago, and really it's just to kind of guide us as we're developing the agenda and making sure that we're not forgetting really important items. So you'll see, like in December, we're gonna potentially have the presentation of the audit. And then in August, we will develop the FY26 budget development timeline. So it just kind of walks you through some of the important agenda items. Obviously, the minutes will have future agenda items. So the chair and I typically will get together and create the agenda.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments or discussion about the monthly agenda items for this year? All right. Hearing none, we will move on to 6.2, which is the FY25 budget development for revote. And the budget modeling priorities is in the addendum packet. And I would ask Lisa, would you like to give us a little bit of background on this document that you've provided?
Yes. So we're gonna put this up on the screen. Thank you, Karen. We do have one modification to this, and that is on line 16. Karen, if you would just move that down a bit so we can see that we accidentally had entered 2 assistant special ed directors. So there was one on line 16 and there was one on line 24, I believe. And we didn't mean to have 2 assistant special ed directors. So the Berry City elementary middle school outplacement general ed moved into the row 16. So that's one modification to this spreadsheet that was in the addendum.
Okay.
So as you can see above the reductions are the calculations that get us to the tax rate. So you'll see the total overall expenses, and with grant funding, you've got your education spending, which is how we calculate the tax rate. You divide your long-term weighted ADM by that education spending, and that gives you your per pupil spending. That is probably one of the lowest in the state of Vermont. We're still using the yield that we had originally at 9,775. That number is just finalized after the legislative session, and it will likely go a little higher. Because people are bringing their original budgets down and making some reductions, that means that the yield will go higher. When that happens, the tax rate goes low. So your tax rate, you can see in addition to the tax rate, we also received a discount of 3 cents. And that's reflected in the very bottom highlighted.
Okay. Thanks for that, Lisa. Would you be able to go through some of the reductions, prioritize that list, just so we can understand what those items are? One of the questions that I have for the positions that are included are these open positions, or are they newly added positions? I just want to be clear about what kind of what we're talking about removing from the budget.
Okay, so let's just go write down the list. And so this is prioritized number one. Everything is important, but we had to prioritize. So I guess number one is least important to, so the tech center tuition reduction is simply based on the actual announced tuitions that came out after we developed our budget. So January 15th, we're required to submit our announced tuitions to all of the sending districts. And we, when Jody came and presented the budget for CVCC to the Berry board, she used, I believe it was 19,423 is what she thought their tuition would be. When they announced it, it was 18,901. So I made that adjustment to that line. There were some other minor adjustments, but the majority of our students go to the tech center.
Okay.
So that was really a savings. This Spalding High School behavior interventionist is a vacant position.
Okay.
The leased vehicle, there were two leased vehicles added to the budget, where this is a reduction of one of them.
Okay.
This director's phase 2 increase on the metric is, so this has been one of the sort of contentious things that have been out there. And to give you a little history and context, we developed a salary metric for administrators, the principals, and the directors. And that was 3 years ago. And the principals were, and the reason for that was because we didn't have comparable salaries. Our salaries were inequitable. And so we developed this metric, and the principals were received increases to be put on the metric. Directors were going to be also put on the metric, but in a phased-in approach of 3 years. So when you're seeing increases in the directors' salaries, that's why. So we're actually in phase 2, and without that, we're farther away from the metric than we were hoped to be. Second electrician is a new position that was added. We obviously could benefit from a second electrician, but we know that it's one of the things that we are reducing. The Spalding High School SRO is a position that's not filled. We know that Berry City's police department is really having a hard time staffing. So, and then the C Barn contracted service is, we had added that dollar amount to ask an architect to do a design of improvements to the barn so that we could actually use it and have students in the barn safely. The grant writer, this we have a grant coordinator right now, and we were hoping to elevate that position and have somebody be able to reach out and get grants that could support an after-school program and other things to help our district. Facility. So these across the district, our goal has been to have this construction line in each of the buildings at $1 per square foot. This seems to be an area that we always go to when we need to make cuts. Our buildings are in very good shape, well maintained, but they're getting older. So that $1 per square foot is something that we really wanted to keep, but we know that this is an area that we reduced. The one C teacher is a vacant position, a new position actually. So we are reducing that. The Barry City Elementary and Barry Town Middle Elementary co-curricular. That's their athletics and their clubs. So in terms of athletics, we do have BUUSD, but that is their athletics and clubs. The Barrytown SRO we would be reducing, and the Barry City SRO. So those two, we're calling it tiers as we walk across the spreadsheet. The first tier is the 305,095. That would get you to an 11%. What I just went through, 1 through 14, is a reduction of 825,045, and that is at a 10% increase over last year. Moving along, which we hoped to not have to get to further cuts, we've got a change to the Barrytown principal model, which would be 1 principal and 2 assistant principals. Currently, there's 2 principals, 1 assistant, and we're estimating about 25,000. The Barry City, yes. So currently, the Barrytown administrative model is 2 principals and 1 assistant. In order to have a reduction, we would suggest 1 principal and 2 assistant principals.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then the Barry City outplacement. This is a student placed out of district. The HHB coordinator, student support, is a new position. Spalding High School supplies and field trips are a reduction. 1 special educator is a new position in the budget, and travel and conference district wide. And that is a total of $1,253,645. That brings you to a 9% decrease.
Can I ask you about 2 things?
Sure.
The number 17 and number 19, you said they were new positions. Are those both vacant or are they just new?
The HHB coordinator is a new position in the budget
Okay.
for this year,
But it's filled
for FY25.
with someone's doing it?
No.
No.
I
Proposed to be new for next year.
Proposed to be.
And our principals are here, so if they want to, I don't know if Erica or Jen are available.
Hi, Lisa. This is Erica. I'm here. That is currently a position that Barry City has. We do not. And we had looked to put it in because right now it is yet another duty that's spread between the 3 administrators that are there. And also please know that it was not our intent to move our model because we are short-staffed. We don't have some very key players that are there now. And so those extra duties would have to be absorbed some way as well. But that position actually should be up higher than the model change, if that's something that is determined needs to be removed.
Lisa, were there more questions, or Lisa, will you keep going on these?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's see. The Berry City Elementary, this is the K-8 CARES program, and that was I believe a restorative teacher and 5 BIs. Brenda can speak to this program that she added to the FY25 budget. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Brenda's.
Yep. So the 350,000 was intended to be a classroom teacher, a behavior specialist, a BI level 2, which is a student support specialist, and 2 paras. So it's staffing to expand the program. So this is an expansion. We currently have 22 students. We have a number of students that are already waitlisted and other needs that keep coming to us regularly. So we were looking to expand the program because we're finding a great deal of success with it.
22, this was where we had the duplicate assistant special ed director. So moving on to this, 23 is the assistant special ed director. 24 is the potential of freezing all principals and directors' salaries currently. That's at a 5% increase, but to freeze that would be 105,564. Bus riders, we currently have monitors on our buses, and we budget 150 and typically spend more than that. 2 FTE pre-K paraeducators and 2 pre-K teachers, which is actually 4 classes because so that, you know, that would be a heavy, all of these are very heavy hits for the district.
Are those, sorry to interrupt you, preschool positions filled currently?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have on the list 2 clerical positions for the central office. 1 FTE curriculum coordinator, and then 3 tech integrationists. And that would be for 6.5.
I have a question. Ryan Burn Rose. Sonny, may I ask a question? Jay?
Sure.
Are the clerical positions for central office new, or are they ongoing or cuts?
There would be cuts.
And the curriculum coordinator, is that a cut?
It's currently grant funded, and we were moving it into the budget.
So there's no grant for it.
There is
Not that would have an allowable use for that.
So that means that the work that you do, Karen, there wouldn't be anybody to do that work?
It's a curriculum coordinator team that I work with, sort of distributed leadership. Right now we have a literacy coordinator and a math coordinator that compose the curriculum team. And so it'd be a reduction of one of those.
So one of those wouldn't be there.
Correct.
So is that 3 people?
It would be one full-time position reduction
But I mean, are there 3 you and 2 other people?
who work under, who, I supervise.
Okay, thank you, because I signed up to be on the curriculum committee. I should understand this. Thank you.
Chris Barker?
Thank you. Yeah, my question is about the cutting of the pre-K IAs and teachers. So if those were, or paras and teachers, so if that is 4 classrooms, is that that's a reduction in opportunities for pre-K students, or is it that other classrooms would be that much bigger because it's a cutting down of staff?
I can answer that if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so the way that it turns into 4 classes is because we have AM and PM classes. So ultimately, if we were to remove 2 classrooms, we would lose 4 classes of children, which, yes, would result in reduction in services for young children in our community. And the class size would stay the same of the other 2 classes, but essentially it would impact directly 60 children within our community.
Thank you. So it would be going from 6 pre-K classes, I understand the AM PM dynamic, down to 2. Is that right?
No, it would be 6 to 4.
6 to 4.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Cassandra?
So going from 6 to 4, then we're potentially having issues with students that have intensive needs and are there for extended preschool program. Am I correct?
Yes, there would be an impact of being able to service 60 children, and within those 60 children would likely be young children who need additional support. And if I could just say too, the other big worry for me as the director is we have wait lists, very, very long wait lists, families that are trying to get in on a regular basis, and our intensive needs model, where we offer an extended day model for those children, is really critical, and we're looking and hoping to build upon that. So it would be really detrimental to the early ed program.
Okay, thank
Sarah
you.
has a question, Sonia.
I'm sorry.
Sarah Pregent has a question.
Thank
She's
you.
here.
Sarah.
Thank you. I have a few questions. I'm going to start at the bottom, although I sincerely hope we're not seriously considering dropping this to 7%. But the bus riders, are those a requirement for us to provide under our STA contract?
No.
Comment about the Shake Your Weight Cares program at Berry City. It is an expansion of the program that we currently have in place. Asking for $350,000 seems like a lot of money, but if you take a look at item 16, when we potentially have to place 1 student out of the district, it can cost up to $150,000. So the ability to service more students within our district could potentially save us a lot of money, because if we have to place them outside of our district, we do not have a choice, whether it's in the budget or not, we have to pay for it. My next question, Jamie, it always comes, I'm really sorry. The first 2 tiers of cuts involve facilities. I'm curious if I remember when you presented the idea of a second electrician on our staff, if that is, if you'd really rather have, and I know the dollar per square foot in each facility is actually like an outdated concept, right? It's actually, we should be budgeting a lot more than that. But I'm wondering if the dollar per square foot is worth more to us than the second electrician, because I would actually consider swapping those.
If you're asking me, I would say that I would vote for the dollar square foot for the electrician.
Really? Okay.
But not to say that position is not needed as well, just like everything else on the list.
Sure. And then my other suggestion, and again, I'm hitting Jamie here, I would propose we knock back the dollar per square foot to just 90 cents and keep the 50,000 budgeted for the Spalding SRO within our budget. As a parent of a Spalding student, I can tell you there's been at least 3 or 4 times so far this year where we've gotten a remind notice that they've had to clear the halls because of an unregulated child. And I think those situations would be handled a lot better, perhaps, with an SRO on staff. And I know that Berry City is having some staffing issues. We've had conversations in the past about outsourcing that position to private security firms or other situations like that. And my last point I'd like to make is that under the 11%, so Lisa went through, and if we can find 300,000 in cuts, we are literally taking our pre-CLA tax rate to the exact same thing we have right now in FY24, 1.16. That means there is actually no increase to the tax rate before CLA with that an 11% increase to our budget. Thank you.
Yes, Sarah. Rachel?
Thanks. I'm in person also. Can you hear me okay if I stay here?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I had a couple of questions. The first one, the Spalding High School behavior interventionist. You said that's a vacant position, but is that special ed funded, meaning that it's a service in a student's IEP? It's not. Okay, thank you. I'm also wondering the Berry City outplacement general ed, which is item 16. What happens to students who need that when we don't have money for it? How are those students accessing their education?
We would typically have to overspend if it was a team's decision that the student needed to be placed somewhere to be safe. And
yeah,
yes.
Thank you. The special educator line 19, was that for a specific location or it was not determined? Yeah.
It was not fully determined.
Okay. And then the number 23, the assistant special ed director, would that be a certain school, or would that be only right now we have 2 assistant special ed directors. If we got rid of one, there would just be one left to cover 2 positions.
The theory would be there would be one for the district.
For the district. So following up, who is taking on all those responsibilities? Just thinking about that job seems impossible for me, working long hours. If you're in the schools, you know. I just don't understand how that could work. And how we could stay in compliance with IEPs, and that we already have such staffing issues in special ed. And I guess I'm not looking for an answer. I'm just concerned about that. And then my other question, well, I just wanted to point out that there's been a lot of discussion about increases to directors and administrators. And I was just surprised to see that it's listed number 4, but it's only saving $43,000 about. So it's such a small amount that we're actually saving. So it just, I feel like, has been talked up a lot. Like everyone's getting these huge raises, but we're not really saving much money. Right, and the board voted on those already. So yeah, that was just surprising.
To make those corrections over a 3-year period, right, for the entire administrative team, ultimately the idea was to get these positions close to where their counterparts are in the region over a 3-year period. We started with our principals, we're in phase 2 with our directors. It's just to put us in a more competitive place. But you're correct. Ultimately, $43,000 is not going to have any impact on the tax bill. I think this is much more of an issue around and I get it. I mean, in almost all communities, many communities anyways, school leaders are among the most highly paid people in the community. There's a lot of scrutiny there. And it's tough, particularly in tough times. But we just have got to figure out how to fully staff our leadership teams going forward, whether it's the current team or one in the future. We have to be competitive. That's where that came from. But you're right. It's not going to be. We just felt because of the scrutiny, we got to just put it right out there. And maybe that, through sacrificing this, can help people look more at the stuff that's really going to have an impact on the budget.
Yeah. And while obviously I don't want to see any personnel cuts, or I should say positions cut, especially teachers and paras and PIs, if we don't have strong leadership, or we don't have, we're one less person, one less assistant special ed director, I just think so much more is going to be put on staff, the other administrators. It's going to lead to more burnout, and it's not sustainable. Thanks.
Thanks, Rachel. Jody Bushway.
Hello. I just wanted to mention that the co-curricular for Berry City and Berry Town, Lisa, you mentioned that BUUSD is an option in the event that those had to be cut. But I don't believe that BUUSD actually has the option for 7th and 8th grade in the sports that are offered at Berry City and Berry Town. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you.
Sonia, I know that Emily has a hand up, and we also have
Billy Correct.
We have Billy Correct as well.
So before we move on to that, I'm going to get to everyone, I promise, and thanks for helping me be eyes in the room, because I'm not. Can you just tell me on the second page, there's the line 31 through 40. Are those not included? They're just additional options if we needed them, but they're not prioritized, or they're prioritized as lower on the list?
That's correct. They're prioritized as the lowest in terms of priority. So
if I could just add, Sonia, we have the we did not put, I mean, these are big ticket items, right? We've got Spalding High School athletics and transportation totaling about $650,000. I don't think there's anybody in this room who thinks that's a viable option. We do not want that to happen for kids, but we wanted to show how much that line item actually is, or those two line items. And then there's the transportation. Our STA contract is $1.3 million, give or take. Again, just to show what a big ticket item that is, that, we could look at the contract and maybe reduce busing options for families, but nobody wants to go there either. But then you get down to what we really wanted to show was an area where there was also under real scrutiny, along with the administrative salaries. They're the ESSER positions, which is something that is not unique to Barry. This is happening in many communities in Vermont, where it's just become apparent these folks, if you look at what their titles are, these are about the biggest priority to make sure that we can safely operate our schools and meet the academic needs of our kids coming out of the pandemic. So we couldn't in any good conscience put those people out there. But we want to just show that that's about $700,000. That, okay, there's another potential source. It's certainly not one the administrative team sees as a viable one.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna call on Billy Correct. Was that a public member?
Yeah, I work at Berry City.
Okay.
I'm a para, and I'm also the union rep at Berry City for paras. And I have a couple of questions because I don't have clear numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Do any of you know the exact number of paras within the district?
So at about 70, don't quote me, but between
Somewhere around
70 and 75.
Okay. And I have a comment, but first I wanted to know these numbers. And bus riders, are those already our existing paras? And is that including their existing pay, or is that separate from their existing pay? Or is that the bus company? I'm aware that bus company has got riders on the buses now too. Is that their pay?
So there are,
Or is it just all of them?
yeah, it's, some of the, yeah, all of the above. So it is paraeducators, BIs as well. Anybody who can ride the bus, and is looking for extra pay. And then in addition, STE also provides some monitors midday.
Okay. Now on to my fun part. The item 24, the salary, what it says here, salary freezes, the 105,000. This year, incoming new paraeducators were given a $3 bump in pay. That equals what some of us who've been working for the school district for 5 to 25 years are currently earning. The vets got nothing other than their annual $1 raise. And they're upset because that $105,000 distributed amongst roughly, I did some math before I got here, a guesstimate. That $105,000 divided among 50 paras would be a $3 increase per person per pay week, per hour, not per pay week. That would make a lot of paras really happy because we have some that are quitting at the end of the school year because of that $3 raise to new people, because they are so insulted by this issue. And so when we found out one person in the school district was going to get a 19% raise, that one person would now be earning the same thing as 4 paras. Now, we can't get new paras because of the rate of pay. Even the $3 bump really isn't helping. And when we've got the 2 schools that were not included in the survey of competitive schools in the area, Williamstown is mining our people and offering them $5 an hour more. Twinfield is doing the same thing. So if we want to keep our people, we've got to get more competitive with all of the other schools, not just the ones that pay the same amount. And we need you to see us more realistically, because I had to take a cut in hours, not because I wanted to. I was told it was happening. 3 months after I bought a house. Now, 1 hour a day that might not seem like anything to other people who are salaried and have a guaranteed paycheck. That's $200 a paycheck that kicked my butt with a brand new mortgage on my second house payment. We struggle to make our house payments. And the school year, the calendar, all of the extra week in November, I'm really glad everybody else who has a salary gets a paycheck. The paras don't. That's a half a paycheck. November, December, January, February, and April. We get half a paycheck. My take home on those half paychecks is $400. That does not pay my mortgage. That's one of my mortgage. Because I only make a pittance compared to all of these other incomes. And I'm speaking for all of the paras when I tell you this. You're kicking us out with all of these schedule changes. I got 2 people quitting, at least that I know of, because of that $3 bump for the newbies. And that person's been with us for 25 years. We need to be.
Billy, I'm gonna stop you there because I'm guessing there are going to be more questions. I appreciate you giving your feedback. I would I was in the negotiations and I know there's always more work to be done, but I also hope you recognize that we're sitting here having a conversation about how we can cut things.
I understand. I
So
know.
it's a difficult position to be in. So I hope you can appreciate that. So I'm going to try to bring us back around to have a more general conversation about what the finance committee wants to do for a recommendation to bring to the full board. And Jan, I see that you have your hand raised, but I'm going to try to I want to try to steer us back to a more holistic discussion about which direction we're going to move in and what we're going to recommend to the board. So I know Emily had her hand raised before. And so Emily, I would ask you if you have questions or you want to chime in.
Thank you. I just want to talk a little bit more about the excellent point that Sarah Pregent made about this cutting those first 7 lines would lead to an 11% increase, which would bring our tax rate before the CLA to the same that it is this year, with a discount that we are getting. And then also the important piece of information I think that we're kind of overlooking is that the yield is projected to go up. So even at 11% increase with the yield projected to go up, we could present a lower tax rate than our tax rate this year for an 11% increase on our budget. Is that right, Lisa? Am I summarizing that correctly?
That's correct.
So I think that's really important to know and to communicate, because I'm looking at those 7 line items and I think we could live with those with a couple tweaks. Any further reductions would start to really hurt. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Chan, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for letting me chat.
Sure.
Basically, I heard what I think Billy Corrett said, and this is like just an overall premise. I think we need to remember to keep the people that we have, value the people we have, and rearrange our priorities a bit. This is overall for the good of all of us. Sometimes I think we lose that, and I bet it was really hard for Billy to say. I had no idea she was going to say that, and I just heard that. And I think that was very courageous of her. I commend her for that. And I think we all really need to embrace that. Thanks, Billy. I'd have a hard time saying that, but what you said was true. So we need to recognize that and keep those people that we have there, like her. I'm one of them. 18 years. Thank you, Billy. Thank you, board. Thank you, Finance Committee, for this. I appreciate you listening.
Thanks, Jan. Jackie?
Can you hear me? It's Wheeler. Sorry about the rock star. I will be very quick. Thank you, Billy, as well. I just want to say my mother was, they called it ESP, but a para her entire career, and 50% of that was fighting for a living wage. So thank you for saying that. Secondly, I apologize if it's not helpful. Line item 28 and 30. I agree with what Jan said. We value our people. What are these clerical positions? What do tech integrationists do? Do we already have them? And I'm saying that because we're talking about, I totally agree, we should only go to that first batch and get to 11%. But if we can flop something expensive, that might be nice. And then my second, it was mentioned that the grant writer is going to look for an after-school program that exists. I use the YMCA. It could be made available. Look at it later, maybe. And then I had a question about line item 33. I understand that's a contract, so that might be different and we can't really cut it. But we don't really have a full bus team now. So maybe for future things, we can look into what are the parameters of that contract, and perhaps we can just get savings if they are not providing it. Haven't seen it, just a thought. But again, 28 and 30, what do those do? And what do they add? Thank you.
I can try to tackle that, Jackie. The clerical positions for central office are right now, we're just looking at those as general clerical support within our central office. The reason we have it down as low as we do is because of how thinly spread the staff is there right now. But we're just trying to look to find six-figure items, so we put that on there. But it would be tough for that to be absorbed, as Rachel said. You know, when these things are lost, somebody else has to pick it up. The tech integrationists are they're a bit different between the pre-K schools and the high school, but at the and I welcome any of the principals of the schools to jump in here, and Manny, if you're here as well, these work under the tech line. But they are at Barry City and Barry Town. It's exactly what it is. They help integrate technology into the general curriculum, working with teachers. So they basically bring that in. These are very valuable positions. Mike Martin and Jess Van Ormond do tremendous work in that area. Here at the high school, we have Angelique Fairbrother, who is the high school tech integrationist, but she has much more of a jack of all trades role, but equally essential. And I don't know if Luke or Mary or any of those guys are here. They can maybe speak to that. We have those at number 30 for a reason. They have a big impact on kids' performance and student outcomes, and obviously support our faculties and staff a lot too. And
Around this
could I jump in?
Oh, Erica's got it. Go ahead, Erica.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to echo what Chris said. I can't imagine how we would fill holes for our tech integrationist at Barrytown. Chris just used the phrase jack of all trades. Our tech integrationist actually teaches classes as well, and fully supports our entire pre-K through 12. And that also includes teaching new technologies both to teachers and students that help enhance all of our curriculum, from literacy to math to everything in between. So thanks, Chris, for phrasing it that way. I just wanted to tack on what we see. Sorry to interrupt you, Karen.
Oh, it's okay. I was just gonna add that they play a critical role as well with assessment administration. And right now we're just entering into a statewide assessment window, and they have been pulling off things that would be almost impossible for our current teams to do without.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maren?
Hi there. I promise to be really quick, and I want to preface this with saying that I ask this with no ill intent. I do not know names attached with this position, but I'm wondering about the final line item that's like the if we come to it, which is the distance learning coordinator. And I'm wondering, one, if that's a position that we're required to have post-COVID or not. And if we are not, how many students is that position actually serving? And could we swap that for other line items elsewhere? I worry. I know there's been a lot of scrutiny over salaries for people who are leading our district. I question, the truth is, like, we need somebody to steer the ship. And if we don't give anyone incentive to come lead us, there will be a trickle effect, and the cost will be far greater than just money. And so my biggest question is about that final line item. and I'm just wondering about that.
Are any of the high school folks here?
Luke or Mary?
Sure, I can speak to that.
Oh, thank you, Luke.
So the distance learning position was formerly the flexible pathways coordinator, but we found that flexible pathways is much broader than really what that position was covering. So the distance learning coordinator is someone who helps with virtual high school enrollment, the early college online enrollment, and those kinds of courses. So they actually proctor entire classes, help students enroll, explain to parents how that happens, and what they need to do, help kids enroll and access the courses, because online learning at the college level or virtual high school is very different than the online learning that we were doing during COVID. And that flexible pathways and distance learning is something that is required by the AOE. It's one of the handful of maybe more than a handful of unfunded mandates. So that's just something that we're required to have those services. And so for us to have a specialist who knows the ins and outs of it is really important for our students to have a wide variety of programs to access.
Okay.
Thank you, Luke.
And if I could add real quick to that, that position was actually in existence pre-ESSER. So even though it's listed as ESSER, it wasn't one of the ESSER creations.
And Luke, if I can just jump on that to clarify, with some of the challenging budgets we've had in the last few years, we had to shift positions into ESSER to make sure we could keep them, and that had sort of a trickle down effect. Knowing that the person in this position, her name is Margot Austin, knowing that how essential that role and that it's required, we were having to be creative the last couple of years with some of these positions. There's no doubt about it. So your point is right. These were not a number of these were not created as a result of ESSER. We were just having to use those funds to make sure we could get the budget through.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there anybody else in the room who has a comment or a question?
Hi, Dale. Yes. Sonia, it's Rachel.
Okay, go ahead.
I just realized before I didn't say who I was, but I'm Rachel Van Vliet. I'm a special educator at Berrytown, and I'm the BEA president. And you heard, I spoke earlier, Billy spoke earlier, but we're just speaking as individuals, not on behalf of the BEA. But what I'm hearing from everyone here is that we can't afford to make any of these cuts. I mean, prioritizing it, I'm glad to see the ESSER positions at the bottom because those are so essential. But I'm just really concerned about how we can effectively serve our students and provide them the education they deserve by making these cuts. And it's just pretty worrisome. Speaking again as an individual, work is really hard. It's harder than it's ever been. As a special educator, I supervise paras and BIs, and I don't have as many to supervise this year, but it's not a good problem. It's because we can't staff and we can't hire staff. We have other open positions. We have plenty of them. We're already taking on more responsibilities than we have before. And it's and that includes our directors and administrators, as well as our teachers, paras, BIs, and everyone else I haven't named, non-contracted staff. And so it's just really, I think also it's important to look at the tax rate. And Sarah had mentioned the exact numbers and about we're really not saving that much by making these cuts. And these cuts are going to have a huge impact on all of our staff, our families, our students, and our community. And we really can't afford it. Thanks.
Thank you. Is it Irene?
Yeah, hi. I work at Berry City, and I just came on right when you were talking about the CARES program. I just wanted to say that the CARES program has a trickle-down effect on every single class in the middle school, and it allows all students to access their education. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda?
I also want to note that the 3 positions that are the ESSER positions are Berry City. 2 of those are current CARES classroom staff, which would mean I would not be able to continue the existing CARES program, let alone the expansion. And the 3 ESSER positions were pre-existing to the ESSER, as it was mentioned earlier.
Okay, thank you. All right, Emily and Catherine. What direction would you like to go in? What would you like
Hey,
to?
Sonia, one more question from Bern Rose, if that's okay.
Sure, yep, go ahead, Bern.
Thank you. So I've been listening and I'm seeing that we have a line freeze on the directors on line 4. And with all due respect, Chris, I understand how we've been trying to equalize the administrators' salaries. If we could move the administrator salaries, line 24, for freeze for this year in exchange for some other thing, or maybe reduce it to 2.5% at a savings of $55,000. We could keep something in that upper section that we felt we needed to have in there, like a behavior interventionist. And the only reason I'm addressing that, it's not because I don't feel they earn it, but it's where I've heard the most yelling and the most criticism. And I think we need to do something with that to honor all of the critique about how that's worked out. And so that's what I'm going to say about that. Thank you.
And Bern, that's why we put it up as high as we did, just so you know, because we recognize exactly what you're talking about. That's why it's up as high.
Okay, thank you. So Emily and Catherine, what would you like to do for a recommendation to the full board? What are your thoughts?
Can I just say one thing? So while I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, but there is tax stabilization. So there's revenues that can help to offset some of these reductions as well. And so there may be, some things in this list you say we aren't willing to live without that. And so then if the board decided to use some of that revenue, it would help to offset those.
So can I just ask a question before is that how you're envisioning this process to go, where we pick and choose from this list of what we decide? Are we hoping that we stay within the tiers that you've created? Like, personally for me, I would rather take your recommendation and use the model that you've provided and not kind of get into a back and forth. I do understand there is flexibility, of course, but that's really where I would hope the discussion would go, to accept the recommendation of the administration and our business manager and use this model, right? That's what we're really hoping to achieve.
Yep. The key is to come out with a recommendation for a number, bearing in mind there is some timeline pressures in terms of, I don't know if this has already been brought up, Lisa, because I'm sorry I'm late, but around reduction in force notices that we have to, if we are indeed going to be looking at anybody being reduced, we have to talk to them. And we tried to set this list of priorities where it have minimal impact on existing people, particularly in the top tiers. But ultimately, really what the charge of the committee is, in my view, is to give us a number to bring back to the board on the 27th. And as I think it's going to be very difficult to get, we might be able to find consensus on a number, but it'd be very hard to get consensus on the items because everybody has different theories on it. That's just the nature of it. So these are very well thought out, but imperfect numbers. None of these feel good. As we said at the beginning of this process in the winter, that we look at this as a needs-based budget. But we have to respond to the voters and their concerns. As long as everybody understands, to really have an impact on your tax bills, you got to cut deep. You got to cut really deeply here. And I think to Byrne's point earlier about some of those hot topics that are out there right now, we can sacrifice these things, be sensitive to the community's concerns, as long as everybody understands in and of themselves, that won't alter your taxes. I think that's very important. So it's a tough call for everybody.
Okay, so it sounds like the recommendation from the superintendent and the business manager, and I would say by virtue of the fact that you did your meetings with administrators and directors, that these are the recommendations that you are bringing to us in these tiers, if you will, to reduce the tax rate. And of course, we could be more flexible and pick and choose, but it could get very complicated with people advocating for one thing or the other. And I honestly, every time I look at this list, I just keep coming back to, I'm going to date myself here, the movie Sophie's Choice, where she had to choose between her children. And I just feel like it is heartbreaking that we are here. So I just want to go on the record as saying that. I think that it sounds like, Emily, you had indicated that you would be comfortable with the first tier of reductions. And Catherine, I'm just asking you, what would be your preference?
Well, in looking at it, I see that there's 40 lines, and I know I haven't gotten a chance to look at the entire budget yet, but there are a lot more budget lines. And I hear what everyone's saying about not getting too far into the weeds and not really dissecting it, but it's been my experience that that's how you really can extract things without it being too painful for the programs and people that you want to try to save. And I think that it wouldn't be doing the voters justice if we didn't go through this with a very, very fine-tooth comb. Because if I come to this and don't do that, then I'm not doing justice to the folks who wanted me here. I'm not here for myself only. I'm here for the folks who I see every day. And everyone is struggling. The school is struggling. The families that these kids from are part of this community. And to keep burdening them along with all of us, it's just a lose-lose situation. I really think that we can dig a little more and find some other things. I think we need to get the budget down.
Okay, so based on that idea, I'm going to ask Chris and Lisa. It sounds like they were looking for the larger six-figure items for the simple fact that making those line-by-line cuts don't necessarily add up to a lot, 6 digits. And so I'm going to ask Chris and Lisa if you could just respond to that. Is that true or not true?
So I think in the budget development process, and actually the finance chair, Sonia, at the time, and Paul Malone joined us for meetings with directors and meetings with our admin team, building teams. And that is what we do. We go through the budget line by line, and the administrators come up with, reductions that they can live with, and the directors do as well. So I think at this point, that's been done. And in the process, we are a little, we're in it now. We need to make decisions now. So, by next Wednesday, we need to bring to the board a budget.
Sonia, it's Emily. Can I just have a chance to speak again, if
Sure.
that's okay?
Sure.
I just want to explain a little bit how I feel about these reductions and what we're looking at, and what I think about it. And again, I'm just going to say, if we present a budget at an 11% increase based on the fact that the yield is projected to go up, we will still be presenting a tax rate that is the same or lower than the tax rate we're paying now before the CLA is applied. And so for me to look at those first 7 items and see that they are vacant, they're new, we haven't hired them yet, it's not going to impact someone's job. As reluctant as I am to cut them, I think that at 11%, that's where I would feel comfortable providing the best that we can for our students within the situation. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Jackie? Oh, I think she put her hand down. Michael?
No, wait, there was an Irene ahead of me. Irene Mavodones, and then it was me. Sorry.
I think Irene just forgot to lower her hand.
Oh. Okay, so very quickly, can we go with the 11? I know I'm speaking boldly. Put the grant writer up, empower everybody in the district to be able to apply for grants. That's not an unusual thing. I believe in grant writing. It's just an easy thing to cut. I feel strongly, even though they're vacant, we need to keep these positions. There's safety and behavior intervention, BI for short. What are the other revenues? And can we recommend 11 and just kind of cut everything but the actual positions? I know they're vacant. And then that covers to the other revenues cover to 11%. I mean, is that not a thing we can do? Because that, if there's other revenues, I know we probably don't want to dip into them, but I have no idea how much they are. Thank you.
So I just want to clarify what you're saying, because I got you like dipped in and out there. So you're suggesting that we add the grant writer to tier 1 and keep the number 2 behavior interventionist
and number 6. So it would be, yes. So that would, quick math, talk to Sarah Prejean in there, but it would be less than that first tier total. However, there were other revenues to offset that were just mentioned without a total. So could we not use those other revenues to cover the difference between what I just said and that 305.95?
Right.
And that would put you at 11.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for that.
Sorry.
Michael? That's okay. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, I just want to caution the committee about us submitting a budget to the voters on a 4-5 vote again. Just after a 2-1 defeat in Berrytown, we just might not want to do a split vote on that. Just pointing it out.
So, Michael, I'm going to put you on the spot. What tier would you like to go to?
Prefer not to say what tier I would. I'll tell you what I want, Sonia. What I would really like is to see a board that does not need the chair to make that split, because I don't think it's beneficial. So how you get there with the rest of the board members, I think it's, even if it might take a little bit longer, I think it's a good process to go through. And I'm just concerned that if you submit it to the board and it passes on a 4-5 split, we're just going to set the, I don't want to get into July without a budget, because we know what happens then. It's an 87%, and I am not interested in 87% of the previous year's budget. And I don't think, and I'm looking in the room, and I know you guys can't see my face, but I'm positive there's nobody in that room that is okay with 87% of this year's budget. And if you are, well, I don't know what to say, but I'm pretty sure most people are not.
Okay. Thank you.
Sonia, Garrett has his hand up.
Okay. Garrett, go ahead.
Hi, so I just really want to make a comment that in general, as a new board member, I need information to make a decision on if I'm going to be voting on a budget. And I'm not hearing a lot of insight on, there are people that want to see substantial cuts to the budget. I'm not seeing a lot of insight on how much folks want to cut. And so I'm really going to need more information on what number you all are looking at, because it's hard for me to compromise if you're not giving us a number. So, and what I heard from a lot of people while I was campaigning, I went into the city where the budget passed. So, people that did vote it down in the city, there were some that were, they were uncertain because of Act 127 of the number. And so for, for us to, as the superintendent said, we need to let people know if we need to eliminate their positions. We want to get this on the ballot hopefully by May when other folks are voting. So for us to really be rushing through this again when we have some solid proposals here, I think would not be the way that would provide the most stability to the voters. I think we really just need to make a plan, and I really need to know what people are thinking.
Okay, thank you. Rachel?
Thanks. I just wanted to remind everyone that I understand how the election results turned out and the numbers of the votes, but this is directly impacting students. And obviously, most of them cannot vote, but this is a school board, we're a school, and I think we should be thinking about what's going to be best for the students and what's going to produce the best outcomes for students. And it's not just test scores, but I can't see how cutting anything is going to improve the outcomes for students. And I think we just need to keep the students first.
Okay, thanks, Rachel.
I promise I'll be quick.
Okay, go ahead, Jackie.
Final thought, I don't think we lost the budget because it was too high. I think we lost the budget because nobody knew where it was going. I challenge this board to go as high as you think you can. And I will do my best, and a lot of us will, to keep people informed. I think it was a lack of information over the amount. Thank you.
Okay. I think you make a good point, Jackie, in the sense that I think there's been a lot of coverage and talk in the media about how tax rates are going up and how schools are spending too much and the impact it's going to have on taxpayers. And I think that in a general way is true. And I also think it's true that the large majority of the increase, which I have been saying, and I will keep on saying, the majority of the increase for our taxes is because of the discrepancy in property values. It has nothing to do with how much we are spending at schools. So to Chris's point before, and Sarah Pregen's point, and Emily's point, we can cut all of this, but we're doing it because there's such a difference in what your house is assessed at and what you could sell it for today. And that's the problem, in my opinion, because we are having to create a budget that will make homeowners, property owners happy on the backs of children, on the backs of students, because this is how our funding formula works. And because there is such a discrepancy, and because it changed so dramatically, and not just here, across the board in most districts across the state, we are being asked by our community to go back to the drawing board and make some very large cuts. It sounds like some people are saying some very large cuts so that we can appease taxpayers because the value of their home has increased. And so, while I understand that some people are upset about that, I think our job as school board members is to try to find the balance between what taxpayers can afford and also what our students need and deserve. And so this is where we are right now. So I'm going to go back to our committee of Emily and Catherine, and I'm going to say, what would you like to do to recommend to the board?
I would recommend that we look at how we could make this more economical.
Okay, but what do you mean by that?
There needs to be cuts made. That's how I see it. What exactly, to Garrett's question, where he said what exactly, I'm not sure. I am also a new member of the board, so I'm just getting into this. This is my first week, and this is what I have, is this meeting and this budget. So I have to get up to speed in a very short period of time. If I don't feel comfortable voting on something because I don't have enough information, I can't vote yes. So for me, as where I sit, I need more time and more information, but I think we have to make a genuine effort to really scrutinize everything. And I heard what Lisa said, and I'm not diminishing that they go through it, but I think we need some other eyes on it. I think we need a fresh look at it from some different perspectives, and then we can make a decision, and we might be able to even make a decision that the rest of the board could agree on, which would be wonderful. I don't have a number and I don't have a percent, but I know it needs to go lower.
So you're suggesting that we take the time to review each line item and go lower than 11%. I'm just reflecting back to make sure I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay. And when you say you would like to take more time, are you suggesting that we don't make a recommendation to the full board at this time and that we push out the vote and not vote in May?
When do we have to have our numbers in for the vote in May?
By April 10th.
And today is March 18th. So
there's a board meeting next Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks after that, there's another meeting, April 10th.
Finance.
No, there isn't another finance meeting. It's a board meeting.
Okay.
But we have contractual obligations of an April 1st deadline for any RIF notices that are non-negotiable. So, I mean, if we went beyond April 1st, we could not be RIFing people. We would have to find those cuts somewhere else.
So we'd have to have something set up by April 1st.
Well, really before that, because April 1st is when the notices go out. We'd have to have conversations with people.
It would be nice to be able to bring a budget, and we need time to create it.
Work on it. Yeah.
Work on it
And
bring it
unfortunately,
on March
people are where
27th.
the positions typically are where a lot of the funding is, unless you start getting into big programs. So it's tough.
It is. This is very difficult.
And I think to Michael's point, I think Michael's still there, but there's some degree of consensus will help get this done, because it would be catastrophic to go into July.
Yeah.
I'm hoping by the end of this week to have updates on the yield.
Yes. Well, that's the other thing. It's difficult to make a decision when you don't have that number, which makes a big difference. We'd like to hope that the yield goes up. But do we have a guarantee the yield is going to go up? No, we don't.
We never do.
So we can't make a decision and say, oh, well, it's not going to affect anybody. It very well could, and it could be very detrimental. So that's another thing. I don't want to be hasty and then regret it just for lack of some extra time that could be spent.
We do know that our tax rate at 11% is the same as it is currently in FY24. So there is no increase based on expenses.
All CLA related.
And I'm just going to chime in because I think we have absolutely thrown you into the deep end, Catherine, and I apologize for that because it is a lot to absorb and understand at your first finance committee meeting. And I understand the very difficult position that you're in, and it is a lot. So I appreciate that you're trying to understand it and that you're trying to make decisions, and there's a lot of it's a very complex issue because if we could take more time, I think we would, but it sounds like with needing to be able to give people RIF notices, if we're going to go to, different levels of these tiers, will require us to know by next Wednesday when the board meets so that those RIF notices can go out before April 1st. Otherwise, we get painted into a corner and are not allowed to do the RIF notices, which means we would have to cut in other places. So those, neither option is good, but this is where we are. Lori Bernier.
Yes, thank you. I just would like to say that I have dug in a little bit to line items for expenses, and I couldn't agree more with taking a deeper look at where spending is going. I think there's areas where there's unnecessary spending that can be looked at. And in doing that, maybe some of these sensitive positions that you're talking about tonight that everybody hates to see go away can be avoided. I don't think it's right to push things along based on these objectives that you're talking about that you have to give out within a certain time. I think it's time to really dig in and straighten things out rather than just keep going along year after year with what has occurred every year with every budget. You can't just keep avoiding the problems. It's time to stop and dig in. That's my opinion.
Okay, thanks. Michael?
Yeah, regarding the different meetings that we have, we can always do an emergency meeting, even though, it's like 3 days after our normally scheduled meeting. Regarding the time frame, RIF notices, I understand that those have to be done. I don't think anybody's really interested in doing RIF notices. I think any cuts would probably come out of, positions that are not currently occupied, I would assume. But again, the consensus is what I just want to emphasize, if we want to pass the budget with the people.
Okay.
Could I elaborate on something that I mentioned too, in thinking about how this might work? Are things like with the staff that we currently have and certain positions. So it was mentioned in this budget about changing the Barrytown principal model, and that was a $25,000 adjustment. Is it possible that there's a way to reconfigure that so that you don't have to necessarily cut positions, but maybe the current position could do more and we could give them more of a raise than look at cutting positions or something. So it's shifting. roles and responsibilities in ways that probably people are already doing. When you mentioned that there's a tech integrationist that's teaching classes, say, and things like that, if there's ways that we can make it so that folks that are already doing what they're doing, instead of looking for filling positions, we could compensate them and maybe make it so that they were part of it. It's just an idea, but these are the kinds of thoughts that I'm having, is that there's ways with the folks we have. And I think to go along with, was it Billy? When she was talking about the para educators. So if they were compensated more, say, we might not need necessarily fillers other places, because they would be satisfied and happy and being given the respect that they would want, because it's not just based on the pay. And just like anything, education, you can put money into it, but it's not necessarily going to mean that you're going to get a better education. It's the whole environment. So there's got to be multiple factors in it, but since this is finance committee, that's what we're looking at. So thank you.
We have Sarah Pregent Sonia has her hand up.
Sarah, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you to Catherine and Garrett. I understand coming into the board at a time like this can be pretty intimidating. You're looking at all these numbers, different reports that you haven't necessarily seen before, what it all means. A couple of things to note though, it may feel like we're rushing it, but a lot of us have actually been looking at these numbers since last fall in detail, line by line. So I understand the desire to do that, and the history's out there. If you want to go back and look at past prior meeting packets, it's all there, including line by line discussions. Lisa hates me a little bit sometimes because I went through the spreadsheet literally line by line, adding out how much are we adding to every individual line. So that work's been done. This is where we're at now because of the failed budget. Additionally, 95% of our budget, there's nothing we can do about. The teachers' contracts are negotiated. They're settled. The para contracts are negotiated. They're settled. I still believe. I know. You know, I'm gonna. The janitorial contracts, they're settled. There's not much we can do for those lines. They are what they are, unless we go back to negotiations and open up an already settled contract. The items that they're bringing to you are items that we have what little control we have. So I understand it may feel like we're rushing things, but we're really not. We've been doing this for months.
Here's a suggestion. Sonia, can I?
Yep, go ahead.
If we were to bring, it sounds like we have maybe a recommendation of 11%. If we brought options to the board next Wednesday with an 11 and a 10 and showed them both options.
And would we have a better understanding of the projected yield at that point from the state?
Yeah. Does that sound like?
I think that's fine. I think the board is probably going to want to see this entire model and priorities that you've given to us, because as much as we've just had this discussion here, I'm guessing we will be having a similar discussion at the board. There's 3 of us on this committee, and we could make a motion and make a recommendation, but there are 3 of us out of a 9-member board. So I'm not sure how helpful that would actually be. So, and it sounds like it sounds like Catherine would, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Catherine, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, is looking for some more direction from community members about what they're looking for, just as Garrett was indicating. And Emily was fine with the 11%. And then, we have other board members who obviously are not here and they're not weighing in, and we don't know what they are thinking. So we're going to have that bigger conversation at our board meeting next week. I think that this is very helpful. I think it's helpful for the community to understand what we're looking at, and I appreciate all of the work that you've done to get us to this point, because I know none of it is easy to decide what you can let go of and what needs to stay. So unless there's something else that's earth-shattering, or a really, someone has found the money tree in their backyard that they would like to share with us, I think we should probably move on to the next item. Maren, you're the last person with your hand up, so I'll let you have the last word.
Thank you, Sonia. I keep hearing a few different people say we need to go through this with the fine-tooth comb. That work has already been done. I think the bigger issue is that the people who are in our schools most are not being trusted to know what we need. And people who are not in our schools are saying we need to look at it again. But the people who are in our schools, who see our teachers and our students, mostly our students, like we have spoken very little about them tonight, and it's all about them. Those people have gone through it, and they've done the work, and they've said, this is what we can, we are surviving on the bare minimum. We can't take much more. It's like the giving tree. We give and give and give, and there's nothing left. Trust that I've worked here for 15 years in really great times and not so great. One of the great times were when the administrators were trusted to run the schools and to do their job. And I'll end it there.
Okay, thank you so much. So Lisa, thank you.
Question? Or?
Very, very quick.
Okay.
Okay. I'm well aware that the teacher and paraeducators were negotiated. That's a lovely word. I'm also well aware that, or have been made aware that the board refused to raise paraeducator raises more than the $1 a year we get, and then offered newbies $3 more. That is a slap when the board does that. I don't know, but we have a new board now. So can we at least discuss a $2 boost for each of the 75 people? That would put us slightly more than the newbies. A lot of people happier. And I know this is about cutting the budget. I get that. But you're cutting people. When you cut the budget, people you need, the paras. No, we don't have enough. But $2 an hour more for the vets, just for us veterans, will go a very long ways. Especially at $305 in positions don't even exist yet. Can we go to 10.5% and keep our SROs? I know you guys worked really hard trying to get this budget together. And I respect that, but I know this is pulling healthy teeth. Thank you.
Thanks, Billy. I'm assuming it was Billy. I'm not there, so I apologize. So we're going to move on now, because I think we could probably continue to talk about this and what we can swap and what we can't swap and what would make the most sense. But the bottom line is the board's going to have to make this decision next week. And so we will leave it to the full board to make that decision. The next item on the agenda is 7.1, the FY24 revenue expense report. And Lisa, I would ask you if you could just review that with us.
Sure. So this is the monthly expense and revenue summary report. And you'll notice that there's columns with year-to-date expenses, and a year-end projection column. And it looks like we are anticipating a surplus at the end of the year of approximately $680,000. As we get further, into the year, we are able to sort of fine tune that. But at this point, we're at 680,000. Do you have any questions? If anybody has any questions, happy to answer them.
Lisa, could you just speak to the reason why we have, especially for the narratives for the unspent, it says salary, benefits, and those sorts of things for surplus or deficit. What are those unfilled positions? I'm trying to understand why some of these are over and some are.
Yeah, it certainly is unfilled positions. Change in the oftentimes if we hire a teacher who is replacing a veteran teacher and they're a new teacher, there could be a differential of up to $40,000. In benefits, if we hired somebody who the previous teacher took benefits, but the new teacher doesn't, that can change the benefits. So that's pretty much the salary benefit differential. Are there any other?
Yeah, could you also speak to what the bulk of the surplus, because the way that I'm reading this, it looks like it's the census, line 120 census-based grant change and special ed.
It's primarily, we are receiving more extraordinary revenue, and that is because we budgeted a certain amount and calculated a certain amount. But with Act 120, not 127, 173, there's a new formula, and it allows more reimbursement for those extraordinary students, and those are students who are eligible for special education, whose expenses exceed $60,000. Anything above and beyond the $60,000, we're reimbursed 95%. So that increased significantly.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
I have one question, Sonia, Emily.
Go ahead.
This surplus, projected surplus, as we get closer to the year, you'll have a better understanding of what that number actually means and is, right?
Right.
This is all kind of a projection. And then with the surplus money, does that go into our tax stabilization? Do we put it on the ballot to decide what the voters decide what to do?
And the board could choose to put the entire amount in capital reserve funds, or they could transfer it into your tax stabilization fund, or do nothing and it would just stay in your general fund.
Okay. And that could potentially be on the ballot again.
Yes.
For our revote. Okay, thank you.
I want to clarify that. So this number, I actually don't even know. What were those other articles? Did they pass, or was it just?
They did. Yes.
Okay.
So just to clarify, I'm sorry. This number isn't going to go on the revote.
Okay.
Warning.
Okay.
No, this is for the fund balance that would go next year.
Next town meeting day.
Warning. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So the fund balance that we had from FY23, we asked the voters to allocate part of it to the capital improvement fund and part of it to our tax stabilization fund, and those both passed.
Correct. 700,000 went to the tax stabilization reserve, and 295 went to the capital improvement reserve.
Okay. Are there other questions regarding FY24 expense or revenue?
Hi, Vern here.
Okay, go ahead.
I feel really, I understand the tax stabilization. And so if we have some money and we have, is it a rainy day fund?
It's a reserve for when, for example, if our student count dropped and our tax rate was going to be, a really much higher than it is, then that we would use more of that tax stabilization fund. So really what it does is it stabilizes the tax rate so that the district doesn't have the ebbs and flows and the ups and downs.
So do we use it every year, or do we?
Currently, for over the last few years, we've used 700,000 each year as revenue. So we take 700 from that tax stabilization and we add it into the revenue section of your budget to offset expenses.
So that's not, I'm just trying to think of what I've heard people talk about. If we didn't put that tax stabilization money in the budget, can you take that just out of the budget and say it's going to be whatever it is, so that if we have 3 kids that cost $150,000, do we get money for that from the tax stabilization? That's the kind of thing that
so you could use more of your tax stabilization money and bring the expense lines down. Because a budget is made up of expenses and revenues.
Okay, and so then we put that into the revenue. That's how, so without it, then it means that our budget is higher. Because we have, the outcome is that it would cost us more. And it's sort of like a carryover.
Yeah, you have your expenses less your revenue equals your education spending. And the education spending is the dollar amount that we use to calculate taxes.
It's sort of like I got a little bit of a bonus because I worked overtime. And so I put it in the bank. And next year, when I had to go out and buy my kids' school clothes, I had that money to buy my kids' school clothes. Okay, thank you. I can understand that.
All right. Are there any other questions regarding FY24 revenue expense report? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 8, which is items for future agenda. Our agenda for April 15th, which is the next meeting, it will definitely include the items that were that we discussed earlier tonight when we were reviewing the monthly agenda items. So we'll discuss the expense, the FY24 budget expense and revenue projections again. We'll also discuss the FY25 budget revote and board communications. And are there any other items that committee members would like to add to the agenda for next month?
No, I don't.
Okay. No. All right. And I'll work with Lisa to figure out how long those will take, and then we'll probably pull something from the parking lot as well. We had a meeting in, was it our last meeting in February where we didn't have a meeting because we didn't have a quorum.
Right.
So all of those items had to go back into the parking lot.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, our next meeting is April 15th, 2024 for the Finance Committee. And at this point, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.